Hi everyone, I am back. So I'm going to be reading a few more chapters of the book, The Unwanteds. So I hope you enjoy. So I already read, let me see. I'm just going to see how many chapters I've read so far, but I'll be reading more besides the completion. So I read one chapter. Let me see what else. Sorry, 1 second. I think I don't know what's happening. Oh yeah, I read almost 3 chapters, so now I'm going to be reading like 3 chapters. I hope you guys enjoyed. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, we're going to start out by reading a chapter called The Death Farm. Okay, no one spoke during the 15-minute bus ride on the Death Farm. It was stiffingly hot. Flies buzzed and darted at the closed windows, unable to escape. When Alex pulled out his deep daze, he wiped the sweat off his forehead with his upper arm and looked around the bus. In front of Alex, connected him by a long chain over the high-backed bus seat, was his neighbor and friend, Megan Ranger. It was a bit of a shock to see her in this group. She had only one infraction as far as he knew, but it was a double singing and dancing. Alex had witnessed it, but it wasn't he who had reported her. She had a pretty voice too, but Alex was not permitted to think about that. Despite the heat, Megan's face was white as the moon. Across the bus aisle was Samhid Barkish, who was well known to Alex but not necessarily well liked by him. Sorry guys, my voice is a little hoarse, a little bit. So sorry. Just wanted to let you know quickly. Okay, back to the reading. Alex was surprised to see him here too, since the boy had privately boasted to Alex and Aaron only last week that he was going to be in the Quilletary. Samhid was obviously fighting tears and glared furiously when Alex's eyes landed on him. "What are you looking at?" Samhid said. But one of the younger governors gave Samhid a warning look. Unwanteds were not allowed to speak. Their last words had already been uttered before the purge. 1 second. Okay. Alex dropped his eyes and took in a few breaths, vowing silently not to look at Samhid again until, well, ever. Instead, he turned the gaze to see behind his own, not having noted in the shock of it all who was attached to his other arm. He nearly had to stand in order to see over the high seat back to where the chain led. But he didn't, since the governors were watching. All he could see was the straight jet black hair and big, watery blue eyes of someone he was sure had to be a girl. Okay, but a tiny girl for 13, he thought. She didn't turn away. Instead, she held his gaze, blinking away her tears only once during the long moment. Her eyes were deep and soulful, which wet black lashes all clumped together from crying. After a moment, Alex attempted a half smile. He doubled that she could see his mouth if he couldn't see tears, but her eyes crinkled the tiniest bit in response, and for some reason it made Alex feel just a little bit good. There was no one else on the rickety old bus that Alex knew. He thought for a moment about being here alone with the governors, and for some selfish reason he couldn't quite explain, he felt a rush of something glad. Knowing Megan and the others were there with him, that he wasn't the only unwanted in the entire land of Quill. The bus chugged past the nursery where all of Quill's trees stood, past the cattle ranch on the way out of town, and along the stark, dingy gray south wall of Quill for several minutes before the equally bland houses disappeared and the land grew unattended and desolate. Alex's stomach churned when the driver braked and the bus slowly groaned to a stop in front of the black, solid iron gates of what the people of Quill called the Death Farm. None but the high priest Justine and the governors had ever been inside the gates and returned alive, and they didn't speak of it. Only the people of Quill, in hushed voices, would talk about it now and then, and speculate about how long you might be held there before the Illuminators disposed of you. And just how did they do it? Was it painful? Did they sedate you before tossing you into the great lake of boiling oil? Alex tried hard not to think of these things, but the harder he tried, the more he thought of them. And so it was almost with relief that he heard the bus door creak open and the governors tell all of the unwanteds to stand and disembark. There was a distinct smell, pungent, when the children walked off the bus and gathered along the black gate that led to the farm. It was an uncommon odor, different from the fried smells that came from the quillatory vehicles. Alex assumed it was burning oil wafting off the nearby lake. He had never been this close to it before, since no one was allowed near it. No one could even see the lake, because the towering cement block walls that surrounded the land and reached all the way up to the barbed wire ceiling 40 feet above. No one, that is, except the unwanted. Alex glanced at the black-haired, blue-eyed girl next to him. The protective barbed wire ceiling that crisscrossed and covered the entire land of Quill made a shadow box on her face, capturing her tear. She shook silently. She was not 13, Alex decided. In a brave moment, with nothing to lose, he whispered, "I'm Alex. It'll go quickly." He wasn't sure why he said that. It was the only comforting thing he could think of. She blinked and turned her face up at him, making the shadow boxes race across her face like they did across everything, everywhere. "Lanny," she whispered back, and shook her head. "And no, it won't." Alex didn't know what to say. He stood at attention as the governor took a key from a string around her neck and unlocked the gate. "Summon the Eliminators," the woman said. Another governor obliged by pounding on the gate. When the enormous gate creaked open, the governor stepped away and began boarding the bus again. Lonnie watched them go, tears streaming down her face. "Goodbye, Father," she said as a slight, gray-haired man boarded the senior governor. Boarded. The senior governor paused in the doorway for a split second and then, perhaps heavily, continued up the steps without looking back. He took a seat on the opposite side of the bus. Lonnie turned away and roughly whisked the tears from her cheeks. The bus drove off as a giant black iron door to the dead farm widened enough for the chained children to enter single file. Inside were 4 enormous eliminators robed in black. Their heads were covered in cloth, but their beady red eyes pierced into the already frightened souls of the children. Lonnie now appeared to be the only calm one. She held her head high as the long chain of children walked inside. "What are they?" Megan gasped, and reached awkwardly from Alex's hand. Alex grasped Megan's hand and gave it a frightened squeeze. "I don't know," he whispered. He felt like his chest was going to collapse. Breathing in and out slowly, Alex closed his eyes for a moment and shivered as the gate groaned and closed with a loud clang. The loud clicking automatically on the other side, separating them from Quill forever. The eliminators took the ends of the chains and trudged slowly, the children following. Okay. They were in a small cement yard. A gray stone building stood before them, and a steaming black lake boiled beyond it. Alex shuddered. That's where they'll do it to us." The oily stench seemed to grow stronger as they shuffled across broken cement, past bundles of burned-looking weeds, toward the building. It was more desolate than the most wasted section of Quill. Even the sky was clouded and gray here, although there was no barbed wire, just open sky. None of them had ever seen an uninterrupted sky before. Everything was eerily silent but for the clanking of the chains and the scuffle of shoes as the unwanteds moved forward. The seconds felt like hours when the eliminators stopped walking and turned their eyes to the sky. Alex followed their gaze. The other children looked up too. From the sky over the boiling black lake, a large bird or something slowly approached. The eliminators seemed to be waiting for it, and they stood, huge, hulking, silent, as a 4-legged, winged creature landed with an ominous thud directly in front of them. Okay. Next chapter. Elimination is the name. The creature was an extraordinarily beautiful yet frightening tortoise with long wings that were covered with glistening white feathers dipped in black. The mosaic-shelled beast stood on all 4 legs, stretching out its neck to view its audience, and, even on all 4s, was more than half as tall as the smallest child, Lonnie. The spectacular creature bobbed its head to the eliminators, and then it looked each unwanted in the eye. In turn, each dropped his gaze and instinctively drew back as far as his chains would follow. After a few moments, the tortoise appeared satisfied when it spoke. To the utter shock of the children, it was in a deep, agonizingly slow voice. "Well, come," the tortoise said, low and grim, and the word caused a chill to run up Alex's spine. "We've been," in pause for a breath, "expecting you." Some heed the glaring boy from the bus, who had been silent all this time, muttered an oath under his breath and raised his fists, ready to fight. But Alex and the others were fiercely mesmerized by the odd creature that stood before them. What was this thing? What was it going to attack? 1 second, guys. Okay. Was it going to attack? What did it have to do with this decrepit farm that contained nothing but the smell of death? They watched the tortoise, almost afraid to look at its grim face, but not quite able to look away either. The tortoise blinked a long, slow blink, craning its long neck to look behind it. It lifted its round front leg and held it next to its mouth, as if it to cup its words. Marcus, it called out in its slow, grim voice. It's time. What in the name of Quill is it doing? Alex wondered. A moment later, a tall, thin figure emerged from the gray building and lifted his hand. All at once, Alex felt dizzy as the space around him seemed to swirl. The oily lake whirling with the with the gray building and the wall behind them, until everything was a spinning charcoal haze. He blinked rapidly and wondered if he and all the children had already been eliminated. If it was over, nothing in his body hurt, yet the cold blur of everything around him now faded, softened, cooled to white, and then grew steadily brighter, nearly blinding them. This was nothing at all like what Alex expected to feel when immersed in the great lake of boiling oil. Megan, who could not help herself, cried out, "What's happening?" Alex squeezed her fingers, more to reassure himself than her that they were still together. He sucked in the breath but couldn't answer. Another moment later, the white melted and color emerged. The small, desolate lot had transformed into a huge world so full of color. Alex could hardly see. The sun shone in a cerulean sky. The cement turned to a lush carpet of grass. The water fountains emerged from the earth. 1,000 trees sprouted and grew to full height, scattered far and wide. I like the way that sounds. Just saying, I like the way that sounds. The boiling lake softened into a calm sea of blues and greens, and the single gray building expanded into an enormous, sprawling fieldstone mansion. Wow, I love the way that sounds. I'm sorry, I just wanted to say that. The gnarled weeds at the children's feet wavered and transformed into wide-eyed animals, both common and fantastic. Even the illuminators transformed. Their black cloth coverings disappeared, and all four grew even taller with animal like heads and sleek long necks that melded into huge, stout, strong. I need to pause the video 1 second. Stout, strong bodies like the unwanted had ever seen. The newly transformed illuminators were covered in a fine layer of shimmering black hair that reflected the sunlight, and their previously frightening red eyes grew kind and intelligent, a rich amber brown. As the unwanted gawked, the shackles on their arms unbuckled and fell to the ground. They took in a collective odd breath, rubbed their sore wrists, excuse me, and checked to see if the others were all still there. The tall, thin figure that had emerged from the great building now matched was a man dressed in a flowing, multicolored robe. He strolled toward them. A fluffy shock of white hair stood up on his head as if he had just been struck by lightning. "Greetings, friends," said the man, his voice warm and clear, pealed like a pleasant-sounding bell. He opened his arms wide. "I am Marcus today. Welcome to Arteme." He paused, touching a finger to his lips, and then smiled brightly. "Tell me, children, how does it feel to be eliminated?" Okay, guys, you probably are eager to see what's in the next chapter, but I will read some more tomorrow morning. I'll just give you a hint. Not hint. I will tell you what the next chapter, title is about. Title is, it's called Mr. Today. They just introduced Marcus Today to us, and they were like, and then they said and then it said on there that he asked how it would feel to be eliminated. So I hope you guys found that interesting. I hope you'll have a great rest of your day. Okay, have you subscribed yet? Have you made that button turn gray? And have you made the like button turn black? If you have not done so, do those steps now. It means so much to me. I am so grateful for all the subscribers I currently have, and I hope to get more soon. It's just amazing posting for you guys. I truly like posting to you guys. I hope you enjoy my audiobooks. Bye, everyone. Once again, subscribe, like, and maybe comment if the comments are not disabled. Your choice. Totally your choice. Bye, everyone.